Thank you, Sam. And thank you all for being part of We the People and for taking on this challenge in this really extraordinary time of spending a year doing this intense study of the Constitution. It's really a privilege for us to be able to spend a few minutes with you this afternoon discussing the Constitution and the issues you have found in your study of it. I am Robert Allison. I'm a professor of history at Suffolk University, which is in Boston, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
I'm Jack Barlow. I am a professor of politics at Juniata College in Pennsylvania.
Lindsay Draper, retired from the juvenile court bench here in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin.
Great, thank you. And now I would like you to introduce yourselves and your teacher and tell us where you were from.
I'm a junior. My name is Ava Taylor, and I'm a junior at Clay.
My name is Monty Hokum, and I'm a junior at Clay County High School.
My name is Serena Neal. I'm a junior at Clay County High School, and our teacher is Mr. Philip Dobbins, and our coach is Mr. Mike Mullins.
Thank you. And we are doing Unit 2, and the overall question is, how did the framers create the Constitution? The question we would like you to discuss is, what were the major disagreements among the 55 delegates during the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, and how were they resolved? And what issues, if any, were not resolved, and what were the consequences, and what changes, if any, should be made to the Constitution? So please begin.
There were many disagreements at the convention about slavery, how to collect tax, and the new executive branch. But the major disagreements were representation in Congress. Congress is how the people are represented and how the country levies taxes. Through the Virginia Plan created by James Madison, which called for a strong national government and 3 branches, and the New Jersey Plan created by William Patterson, which was designed to keep an equal vote in Congress for each state. The combination of these 2 plans is called the Great Compromise or the Connecticut Compromise, which gives us our dual system of congressional representation.
The issue of slavery also played a major role at the Constitutional Convention, and by the end of it, it was still unresolved. The delegates debated if slavery should be stopped and if slaves should be counted when calculating a state's population, since a larger population meant more power in the House of Representatives. Population also affected a state's taxes. The slave-holding states wanted the slaves to be counted to secure more power, and the non-slave states wanted them left exempt to balance the power better. They argued that slaves should be considered property and thus not count towards House seats. Ultimately, the 3/5 compromise was passed to rectify the issue. However, the controversial topic of slavery itself and the unsteady moral grounds surrounding it were too highly debated.
Threatened to slavery was not protected, and Northerners adamantly avoids using the word slavery, as it seems delegates thought that leaving it for the future was the less evils. The issue arose of whether the vice president would become president or only temporarily overtake the duties. William Henry Harrison was the president to die in office in 1941, yet the 25th Amendment, which established filling a vacancy of the presidency, was not passed until July 6, 1965.
The life the framers lived in 1787 is much different than what we live today. This is why the amendment process in Article 5 was created. The framers knew that the country would evolve as time went on, and the Constitution would need to be amended to fit the times. However, the amendment process can be quite difficult and lengthy, therefore causing changes to be arduous. The last amendment added to the Constitution was ratified in 1992. In the 29 years since then, the United States has progressed immensely. Still yet, we have countless problems.
For example, with technology at its height, the right to privacy has been an ever-growing problem. The U.S. Constitution never explicitly says that Americans have the right to privacy. However, it can be argued that privacy is given in certain aspects within multiple amendments through the court regarding the decision of Griswold versus Connecticut and selective incorporation. Still yet, big tech companies can monitor virtually every aspect of their users' lives. According to Pew Research, 8 in 10 Americans are concerned about the amount of personal information social media sites have on them, and about 81% of Americans say they have little to no control over what these data companies collect in them.
Another The big issue we face as a country today is debt. As of April 23rd, 2021, the United States was in debt over $28 trillion. While an official balanced budget plan would not solve the problem immediately, it would diminish and eventually remove the huge deficit hanging over the country. The guidelines of balancing the budget as boundaries and force people and nations to make difficult choices that would never be made if those restrictions weren't there.
Another big money problem that face amount of money that is spent with elections, and the past over the Federal Elections Committee. This then inhibits virtually anyone who isn't a millionaire from running for office, therefore restricting new ideas from coming into play.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. And now, so one question I have is you mentioned the right to privacy, but of course that's the Bill of Rights and constitutional amendments protect us from the government. And much as they may seem like it, Facebook, Google, et cetera, are not government agencies, but private enterprises. So how would a constitutional amendment protect us from big tech?
An amendment would protect us because it would give citizens the ability to choose what they did with their information and what other people did with their information. In an ideal world, an ideal constitution, people would be able to choose where their information went, who had their information, how it could be collected, and where it would go. A lot of these tech companies and a lot of these media companies, such as Facebook, they sell people's information to advertising agencies and things like that. Ultimately, they don't always have malicious intents. They're usually just out for a profit. So,
Mani, it seems like this is a legal issue rather than a constitutional issue.
sometimes I believe in this situation, and it is a touchy situation, this could be necessary because what's to stop, say, Facebook from becoming a government agency? What's to stop one of these tech companies from becoming a government-controlled sort of agency? In that situation, we would need those kinds of protections.
On the flip side of what Monty said, these big companies are allowed to do that because when you sign up for Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you are agreeing to the terms and conditions, and nobody reads those terms and conditions. Everybody scrolls right through them. It's a long list that no one wants to read. And in those terms and conditions, them saying that they can give your information out to people, and you are willingly agreeing to that when you sign up.
Thank you. Yes, Serena.
I would like to agree with what Ava said. As technology furthers and all these new social media sites are created, it's essentially uncharted territory for those companies as well as the government. There's new accesses into people's lives, and they can get information that you might not necessarily want them to have.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit to the nature of representation. And I want to ask, if someone proposed making the Senate proportionally representative, so New York would have a lot of senators and West Virginia would have fewer, and Rhode Island would have very few. What if we did something like that? Would that make our government better and more representative of the people?
No, it would not, because that is why we have the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is our proportional representation, while the Senate is our equal representation. Do I think there needs to be some changes? Yes, because the senators is essentially a millionaires club. Not one senator is not a millionaire. And the House of Representatives, every representative has spent at least $1 million on their campaign to get elected. I do think that there needs to be an easier way for blue collar workers. For example, my father, who at 17 worked on the pipeline, that's all he knows. And I feel like we need someone who comes from that background to better represent those people, and maybe some more people of color and some more women to represent them. I'm not saying that a white male couldn't represent a black female, but I feel like a Black female could better represent her own people.
And
To
to real,
To add on
Uh,
to what Serena was saying, I want to add some statistics in there. There are 535 people in Congress, and 100 of those people are people of color. That's roughly about 20%, 26%, and opposed to the 47% that minorities hold in the American population. So that's not a proportionally represented Congress either.
to reel back on what my colleagues here are saying, going a little bit back to the question, you were speaking about why not make the Senate a more proportionate to population form of representation? Because the Senate is there to protect the smaller states. In the end, if I'm going to use the Electoral College as an example here, if we went off of a purely popular vote in the Electoral College, what is to stop a, say, presidential candidate from caring about one of these smaller states? Because if a state like California has a significantly larger population than a state like West Virginia, California gets 53 seats in the House of Representatives. So what is to stop one of these presidential candidates from just not caring about West Virginia at all? If they put their time and they put their efforts into California, for example, they're going to get a lot more votes out of that. So it would just not make financial sense to care about the smaller states. That's why we have the Senate and the equal representation within it.
It's interesting listening to the discussion where in almost every part of your answer, money seems to be a big part of where the thought process is. Money has entered into almost every answer you have given, starting with, oh, we're not going to deal with slavery because that's a real big part of the Southern economy and they won't join the Union, all the way to the answer that I just heard. Money seems to have dominated every answer. So what if I were to posit to you that really what we had was some really good language thrown at us from the beginning of this country, and some elite rich people created a country that did a darn good job by them? Would I be right?
Could you repeat the last part of that, please? I didn't quite get that.
No, what I'm saying is money has dictated everything all the way throughout our country. And I think we've got an elite group of people who started and who are there in charge now. Am I right?
Yes, sir. A majority of the Senate and House Representatives are wealthy white males. You're correct.
And I'm gonna go out on a limb a little bit here. I'm gonna say it's not necessarily at its roots a bad thing. Now, it is bad that the poorer communities are underrepresented and everything, but ultimately, going back to this root of money thing, education costs money. Richer people are going to naturally have a better education, and I think it would be our job and the government's job, the education system's job, to educate our poorer communities to better that representation in that government, to make money
the
of less
Northwest
uprooted things.
Good job.
Thank you. Good job. Sorry, Judge Draper doesn't get to ask about the Northwest Ordinance and education. Thank you. This has been a very interesting discussion, and I congratulate all of you on it. I was actually just thinking as you were talking that my city councilor, my mayor, and my representative in Congress are all African-American women. And so they can represent me. So good. I really was impressed with your really deft handling of the Constitutional Convention, and then with problems that emerged, some we hadn't heard about before, the succession of a vice president to the presidency. And also, very important point that the lives of the framers are different from ours, although, as Judge Draper reminded us, there are some persistent issues in the way we are, structured the government and the way we continue to try to solve these problems. But each of you did a really good job thinking about these things and raising things we hadn't necessarily thought about, of trying to apply them. And I'm impressed with the work you have done, and impressed with the work your teachers have put into, your teacher and coach have put into this. And I know that I know Senator Byrd was looking down on this with great eagerness to see how West Virginia is going to continue to be represented. And I think he would be pleased. West Virginia is being represented very well. And I congratulate all of you and look forward to hearing more from you during your long lives as citizens of the Republic. So thank you.
Yes, and I'm sure Senator Byrd would chastise us for not bringing up term limits. But I thought you guys did a nice job. I mean, Ava, the issues you were having with kind of breaking up a couple of times, just point out the fact that in this COVID year, right, when we're trying to do everything remotely and trying to take this on in a variety of technological ways that seem like they offer great promise, but don't always get distributed equally, right? So bandwidth is something that is not distributed as well in West Virginia as it is distributed in Boston, right? I mean, I'm in a very rural area in Pennsylvania. I'm fortunate that I have bandwidth through the college, but you guys have done an extraordinary job in a very difficult circumstance, more difficult than most of the teams that we've ever seen. So I want to commend you for doing that. I thought your statements were well crafted. You put a lot of information, including the information about the vice presidency in the statement, which Dr. Allison noted. So, I think that was all, I think you handled that very well. And so I want to applaud you. I want to encourage you to keep on talking about this and thinking about this and studying it as you go forward. So thanks, and go forth and do more of this.
So, okay, so I want to start with the fact that I believe Teacher Appreciation Week is upcoming. And I don't want to let this conversation end without saying that, as proud as anybody is of those of you on this team, you did the kind of work that you did because there were some teachers who are incredibly dedicated and devoted a bunch of energy and time and thought. So I want to start by acknowledging them. Secondly, I want to acknowledge you all. And one of the things about this year and technology and all of that is, it was hard enough when I was in school, when all you did was show up and learn and read and do your homework and go home. I didn't have to worry about whether I was going to be able to get online, whether I was going to do it. Well, I was going to catch something that was going to kill me. I didn't have any of that on my mind. You all balanced a whole bunch of stuff just to get this done. So even if you didn't have any content, I was going to be impressed, but you then had content. The reason I ended up with that question about money all the way through, and I'm not even sure that you intentionally wove that into your presentation the way that you did, but I thought the fact that whether it was, campaign financing was what came to my mind as you all were talking about who the people are who are in power. Whether we want to do something, well, Citizens United speaks to some things. I just felt really just a wonderful realization. And by the way, I wrote down William Henry Harrison. First time I've seen that, I've heard that today. And I think that's what was being talked about by my fellow judges. So you all are to be commended. I heard the stuff, the Connecticut compromise, the great compromise, the stuff I expected to hear. I heard that too, but you brought in some stuff I wasn't expecting. You all did a good job. Thank you all. I enjoyed listening to you.
I just have one more thing. The last constitutional amendment, which I think you mentioned, was actually the second one that Madison proposed, and it deals with the pay of members of Congress. So I commend all of you, thank all of you, and thank you all for being part of this.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having us.